that I'm going to raise the bar in a way that's going to be difficult to compete with.
I'm sure you've been called that a lot in your life.
So the next time you dip your tortilla chip, you are eating testicles.
Is French, and it means death contract.
Oh, God.
Permission to blow your mind, John?
Did you ever walk by and say...
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9. All right, it's just time for another episode of Smart Drivel, John. We don't need to do Bill Haley and the Comets from the 1950s.
I was going to ask you, was that Bill Haley and the Comets? But you anticipated my question.
You know, that is a terrific segue to today's episode topic.
I know what today's episode topic is, and there's no way that's a good segue to it.
But you know what the beauty about words are, John? You can throw them out there and they mean whatever you feel like they're meaning at that moment.
I'm not sure that's how language works, Kurt, because I think we have to have a quasi-common understanding of these words so that we can actually convey ideas and receive ideas from other people. If we
Not the way I work.
we made up the definition, how would we be communicating?
Look, it's how you say it. And that's why text and email is for Satan worship.
Okay, I can't go down this rat hole again with you.
Do you know that text and email messages have probably led to more divorces, angry fights, breakup of friends than anything because people don't understand the true meaning of things?
Well, you are the person who a moment ago was arguing that we should make a meaning for each word based on how we feel in the moment.
Right. I love you, sweetheart. I love you, sweetheart. Depends how you say it, John.
There's no question that tone matters a lot, but the meaning of those individual words was not different.
The meaning of the words, hence today's topic. Let's talk about the etymology, John, of words. And the etymology, by definition, is the study of the origin of words. So why don't we delve in, dive in, jump in, splash in, and talk about where some words came from? Because I bet you there's some fun, smart drivelry type of words out there.
Well, there are, and I'm going to go first. And I assure you that once I'm done telling you the origin of this word, that you are not going to want to dive in. I will also tell you that this first one is so good that I'm going to raise the bar in a way that's going to be difficult to compete with. I'm going to dedicate this to my friend, Lawrence Scheinman, who is a collector of Bugs Bunny memorabilia. You're familiar with the character Elmer Fudd, yes?
Yes.
And he, for those who don't know Bugs Bunny all that well, was an adversary of Bugs Bunny. He would often shoot his gun at Bugs Bunny. I happened to learn recently, Kurt, that the word FUD, are you ready for this, Kurt?
Yeah.
The word FUD, before I tell you, this is a classic case of children's programming having a whole different level of meaning for adults, except as adults, we didn't know this until just now. The word FUD, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, means rabbit's anus. So he is Bugs Bunny's adversary, but he's named Elmer Rabbit's Anus. So there was a whole lot of double meaning going on there. Just think about the word fuddy-duddy or befuddled. To be befuddled is to be confused like a rabbit's anus, Kurt, which is why you don't want to dive into this topic.
Are rabbits' anuses confused a lot?
Well, befuddled means you must be an asshole if you're befuddled.
But what else would they think you were if you're not a rabbit's anus? Well, I love that. I love that. I did not know that. So in that spirit.
In the spirit of what? Etymology or rabbit's asses?
Elmer Fudd and the wonderful people at Warner Brothers Animation. So there's a word called Nimrod. I'm sure you've been called that a lot in your life. A Nimrod, John, is an inept person. However, calling someone an inept person, the etymology of that is 100% sarcasm because it was Noah. Remember Noah of the ark? Yeah. His great-grandson was one of the great biblical kings, powerful, smart, apt, John. He was apt.
He was apt.
And his name was Nimrod.
Right.
He was not inept. The same Bugs Bunny and the same Elmer Fudd, he of the rabbit's anus last name, Bugs Bunny, by sarcasm, called Elmer Fudd, you Nimrod, like someone would say, you Einstein. And he used it in complete sarcasm, and it now has stuck as a word for being inept.
Was the Bugs Bunny cartoon the turning point for that word meaning? So it used to mean something really good, but it was that cartoon that turned it into a sarcastic phrase?
Correctamundo.
So what are the odds that we would come to this podcast with word etymologies that both have something to do with Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny? I mean, the odds on that are pretty long.
Fantastic.
Nimrod. Yeah. So let me ask you a question since you brought it up. How many of each animal did Moses bring aboard the ark?
2.
Yeah, that was Noah, not Moses.
What did you say?
I said Moses.
Ah, okay. That's good.
He had no ark.
No, you got me. Well, actually, he did. The arc of he had a story arc where he started in down and below, and he led the people through and got the 10 Commandments and came down. There was a huge arc in Moses' life.
He had a big story arc, but he did not actually make it to the promised land. He was offed before they made it.
You know, I believe
he pissed off God by calling God a fudd.
I believe the statue of Michelangelo of Moses is pretty cool. Moses has horns for some reason, and he's sitting there tough.
Were horns considered, was that an indication of something good or something evil?
Power, baby, power.
Can we agree that the avocado is going through an extraordinary, we're experiencing peak avocado, aren't we? Between guacamole and its ubiquity and avocado toast. I don't want to get you started on avocado toast.
I had it yesterday.
When it comes to avocado toast and texting, you become a bit of a fuddy-duddy.
The avocado, had trading places been made today, they wouldn't have been dealing with soybean futures. They would have been dealing with avocado futures.
Not to get too quality control-ish on you, but I think it was orange futures that they were dealing with. Randall and Mortimer, what was their last name?
Yeah, I don't know.
Avocado comes from the Spanish word aguacate, which originates from the Nahuatl word, which is basically the part of Mexico, Central America, where the Aztecs were. Their word was ahucatl. And ahucatl, Kurt, means testicle.
For the seed thing inside or for the whole avocado?
Considered sort of soft and fleshy, but it's got a little hard thing in there. And apparently, when you would see 2 avocados, a set of avocados, a pair of avocados dangling from a tree, they apparently resembled testicles. So the next time you dip your tortilla chip into a big heaping serving of guacamole, you are eating testicles, at least according to the Aztecs.
So did Moses bring 2 avocados on the ark as well?
And it was Noah who had the ark.
I know.
That.
Gotcha.
So ahucatl, the Aztec word for testicles. I hope you enjoyed your testicle toast this morning, Kurt.
Well, you know what's great is I think there are a lot of words that's how there's some words that get their name because they literally mean like they're a compound of a bunch of words, but some come from the Anglicization, the English-speaking people bastardizing the words. And one of those, like avocado, but not meaning testicles, but meaning something far better, is the word whiskey, John.
So whiskey, Kurt, talk to me about whiskey.
It means testicle in ancient Scottish.
Actually, it means a testicle lodged in a rabbit's anus.
So,
do you prefer the whiskey with an E-Y or just a Y?
I like the Y. Now, John, no E-Y. John.
Lend me your ears.
And then medieval monks would drink alcoholic beverages. And one of these elixirs that was malt liquor at the time, but it sort of moved on, they called aqua vitae, which is life water, right? In Latin. The Gaelics in Ireland and Scotland and of that area, people in Gaelic then took it to themselves with what they were drinking, and they called it life water. And life water in Gaelic is whisky beta, right? Life water, which over the time became uige, whiskey, and then became whiskey. As you can tell, it's not that far from there. So that's whiskey. Interestingly, vodka, speaking in spirits, coming from Russia, means little water. And we know those Russians drink vodka like water, so they can have a little water, a vodka. But I don't drink vodka, so there you go.
That's a nice sound effect. You want to do that again?
No, because I don't drink vodka.
You not only don't drink it, you regularly disparage it.
Not a fan of it.
You've made that very clear. How do you feel about whiskey?
Whiskey. Okay, give me one now. I just gave you a good one.
Okay, but how do you feel about whiskey? You don't like vodka.
I love whiskey, especially the beautiful scotches from the island of Islay.
Which many people pronounce Islay, but it's of course pronounced Islay. How many of each single malt scotch did Moses bring aboard the ark?
He actually made them malt balls, so it's a little different.
I love malt balls. Those are great.
Yeah, they used to be called avocados.
Whoppers, which comes from the Aztec meaning chocolate testicles.
For all those people who buy houses and then get underwater and have to sell them back to the bank, the word mortgage is French and it means death contract.
Oh, God. That's not positive.
How about that?
I am going to describe for you, Kurt, the etymology of the word salary. Not celery, but salary.
I am salivating, waiting to hear about it.
I wonder if there is something common in the Latin root of salary and salivate. So salary comes from the Latin salarium.
Ah, yes.
Which means salt money, because back in ancient times, salt was used in all sorts of important ways. And it was even referred to for a time as white gold.
Yeah, I think it was for centuries and centuries because it had unbelievable qualities about it, like preserving food.
Yes, exactly right. It was also used for, had healing properties. Anyway, so it's referred to as white gold and was even used as a method of payment in Greece and in Rome and places in that part of the world. And during the Egyptian Empire, they actually paid their laborers in salt. So it was a currency, among many other things. It was very valuable. And your salary, which was sometimes paid in salt, was basically salt money. And that is where the word salary comes from. I don't see a connection with salivate, though.
When you're about to eat and you take salt and put it on a big steak, you start salivating because you see the way the salt dips into the steak and the juices start flowing and you, oh boy, you can't stop. And then you have your gin martini right next to it. You take a sip of that.
I'm going to stick with my conclusion that I don't see a connection between the words salary and salivate.
Okay. As you once said in a previous podcast, permission to blow your mind, Jon?
Permission granted, Kurt.
Okay. I'm going to tell you the etymology of the word quiz.
No way you're not.
Do you know anything about this?
I know a little bit about this, but not enough to interrupt you. So please continue.
Well, quiz is a word that means like a test, right? A quiz, a test.
Like a little test.
Right. So in about 1790, 1791, around this time period, there was a Dublin theater owner. And this theater owner was a guy who was a fun guy, but he also, not a mushroom, a fun guy. But
oh, God. Wow. Oh, my. Woo. I gave you a quintessential Smart Drivel moment around FUD, and you give me fun guy, not a mushroom?
So anyway, this theater owner was a guy who lived life large. And one night, after a few pints of Guinness and a few drams of Jameson, he decided to bet those around he decided to bet those around him that he could make up a random word and it would become a word in the English language within 2 days. And not only that, but the people in Dublin themselves would give meaning to this word.
How would you determine whether it had become part of the English language in 2 days?
You'd hear people using it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, that was the quiz?
So he came up with a random word, and he took letters that are not used that often in the alphabet, Q and Z being 2 of the 4, and came up with this word that made no sense called quiz. He then got a lot of little street kids and urchins and said to them, I'm going to pay you, and I'm going to give you chalk. I want you to go all over Dublin and write on the walls everywhere this word, quiz. For the next 2 days, John, all the Dubliners saw this word and they started pondering, what could this be? It's written in graffiti everywhere. This must be some test of some kind. I wonder if quiz is a test. Boom. He did it.
Boom. Well, that's interesting because I think that not only did this gentleman introduce the word quiz into our language, but it sounds like he was also the original guerrilla marketer by having all these street urchins, chalk and everything, go out there.
And guerrilla, like we've talked about in a previous podcast, is not the animal, but it's the Spanish guerrilla, little war. And that's the way people used to fight. They would fight these little wars in and around. It wasn't a massive war. So that's where we get guerrilla warfare.
The war, fortunately, was not a hot war. It was a war to get the word introduced.
But we had a Cold War too, John.
We did, which is why I distinguished from hot war. And I said, fortunately, it was not a hot war because then people get shot.
Remember, a pet peeve of mine a long time ago was when you have a hot water faucet and a cold water faucet. Why can't you just have one for both?
The word gymnasium, Kurt, you claim to work out a lot. Perhaps you visit the gymnasium when you were doing it.
Yes.
However, you do not do it in the way that the ancient Greeks did it. So gymnasium is actually a Latin word that...
Does that have something to do with FUD?
Well, it has nothing to do directly with FUD or avocados, but it's not that far away, Kurt.
Okay.
So gymnasium is a Latin word that comes from the Greek word that sounds very similar. And the Greeks, as you know, were very much into sports and the beauty of the physical form, the strong physical form. And they sculpture and the Olympic Games and other competitions. And it was common in those days when athletes competed in games like the Olympics that they would compete naked, buck naked. So if they were rabbits, you would be able to see their FUD, no problem. Not that rabbits wear clothing, so I don't know that makes any sense. But they would perform and compete naked. And gymnasium literally translates in Latin, gymnos equals naked. And as you know, eum is any kind of place. A place to train naked is a gymnasium. Fortunately, that is not how it's interpreted in modern times.
In the 70s, New York, it was called the YMCA.
Next time you go to the gymnasium, you can appreciate the origin, but please keep your clothes on, Kurt.
What's interesting is the Greeks believed, as you're right, in the beatification and the perfection of the human body, which is why their sculptures were always over the top, unbelievable mankind. The Romans, who loved the Greeks and did everything to be like the Greeks, one difference they had is they started sculpting the regular people as you actually see their bodies. And if you go to, this is very obvious, if you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in their ancient area, you'll see a Greek sculpture of Hercules.
Right.
And you turn and go the other way and you see the Roman one. Very interesting.
Are they both naked?
Yes.
Did you ever walk by and say, check out the avocados? Check out the avocados on that guy?
They were kind of hard in all those because they're a little tiny.
Well, maybe they had just been in the water.
So, shrinkage, as George said. So, this is a quick one for you, but gets into the Anglicization, the Englishization, making English words out of other words. The word assassin, John, what does that mean to you?
It means someone hired to kill another person.
Yes. Murderers, right, to killing people, usually for political reasons, right? Assassins. So members of a fanatical Muslim sect during the Crusades used to sit around and smoke a lot of hashish, and then they'd go murder the leaders of their opponents. This group became known as the guys who smoke a lot of hashish, or the hashishin, which became assassin. Yes.
Hashishin basically turned into assassin.
Correct.
Let me ask you a question. Would you rather get kicked in the fudd or the avocados? Those words cracked me up, obviously. Obviously. So, speaking of fun times, I am going to share with you the origin of the word trivia, which is it's basically the plural of trivium, and means a place where three roads meet. And of course, as a student of history, that the Roman Empire is famous for having built public roads across Europe, many of which still exist today and are arguably much better built than the modern roads. But at the intersection of multiple roads, of three roads, these intersections became meeting places, public spaces where people from different areas could meet, hang out, do a little trade.
Just like Times Square and Herald Square in New York City, yes.
It basically became a public place for people to meet where inconsequential or trivial things were said and done, because they were mostly populated by regular folks who may have been the subject of a Roman statue.
So like the people in Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park, right, that are just talking and just getting up and chatting on soapboxes. John, this has been a wonderful discussion. We're kind of running out of time, so I'm just going to give you another one that I found that I thought was very cool. The word clue. Do you know where that comes from, John?
It comes from the word clue.
Correct. But it was spelled C-L-E-W until like the 19th century. And clue in ancient Greek means ball of yarn. I know
avocado.
A light bulb just went off your head when I said ball of yarn, because in Greek mythology, Ariadne gives Theseus a clue or a ball of yarn to help him find his way out of the Minotaur's labyrinth.
Who built the labyrinth?
It was Daedalus.
Exactly.
Icarus's father.
Exactly. Well done, Kurt. It shows that you learned good things from Smart Drivel.
This ball of yarn helped him get out of the labyrinth. It was a clue, and the ball of yarn is a clue, so we now call it clue.
Very nice. He left the clue so he could find his way out. I'll give you one last quick one as well, and it is a topic that we have discussed before, but considering what's going on in the world, it seems like a good time for a refresher, and it totally fits today's topic, and the word is quarantine.
Ah, yes.
Back in the 14th century, when Europe was being decimated by the plague, basically the Black Death, during which, which wiped out 30% of Europe's population, the word comes from Venetian, meaning 40 days, 40 giorni, 40 days. And what was happening, the Venetians were trying to control ship traffic because they didn't want ships from elsewhere carrying the plague to come ashore. So when a ship wanted to enter Venetian waters, they had that ship sort of hang out on a neighboring island for 40 days before the people on board could come ashore. And it was first implemented by the Venetians, controlling the movement of ships into Dubrovnik, which of course is now Croatia, but back then was under Venetian sovereignty.
And actually, one of the great later Roman emperors, Diocletian, was from Croatia. And so he actually moved the Roman Empire headquarters to Split, which is just north of Dubrovnik. And you have Diocletian's palace there, which is quite a great, worthy sightseeing thing to see.
And Diocletian ended up dying of a sexually transmitted disease, which is now referred to as Diocletian. It's now called the clap, because we anglicized Diocletian into the clap.
You're making it up.
Accidentally gave us another etymological surprise.
You're making it up.
When you take your avocados and you combine them with fudd, you are going to get Diocletian, whether you like it or not. Don't be a Nimrod, Kurt.
What you're going to get is checkmate, Jon.
Checkmate's an excellent one. That's a good one. Tell us about checkmate before we wrap up.
Checkmate comes from the Arabic, which means the king is dead, because that's what happens in checkmate in chess, which in Arabic is shamat. Checkmate, shamat,
yeah.
Checkmate.
There are two translations of checkmate. One is the king is helpless, and the other is the king is dead. And many prefer the king is helpless because the king in chess is basically pressed into a position from which he cannot escape.
Unless you play wizard's chess, and then all the things kind of explode. I thought maybe you got that from watching The Queen's Gambit, which was an excellent miniseries.
Yeah, that was fabulous. Did you enjoy that?
Very much so, yes. And it caused a renaissance in the game of chess.
Yes, it did. Do you know that the word barbecue, it actually comes from the Caribbean? It's a Caribbean, the Caribbean word barbacoa, which means frame of sticks. Pretty good, huh?
And then the other thing is freelancer, which I think we've also talked about, but it's a great one to sort of leave on, which is there were mercenary knights way back when who would offer their lance for, then they were free from any specific guild to the highest bidder to go fight for them. So they were freelancers that would get paid and go do a job, a temporary job. Now, if they got killed, it became a permanent job, but
anyway, Kurt, this was more than mildly amusing and more than slightly educational. So thank you very much. I definitely learned things. I hope our listeners enjoyed and learned something as well. And there you have it. Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Listeners, as we always ask, because we implore you to give us,
From the Latin meaning beg.
Yes, to please send us your fun and great word etymologies on our website, on our Twitter. I almost said on our Tinder, on our Twitter.
Maybe that would help.
Maybe we get more responses.
Which way do we want to be swiped?
I don't know. All right, dribblers. Until next week, we promise the dribble, Jon.
And we hope for the smart. And if you don't have any words that you want to share with us on our various social media and you'd like to just share your favorite use of avocados, that's perfectly fine too. Kurt and I will be back next week with a brand new episode of Smart Drivel. Until then, we hope your week and life is filled with Smart Drivel. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.